And it was Karl Marx, Stalin, Joseph Lenin. These guys were on the payroll of the Illuminati, who joined with the Freemasons to conspire to bring about a new order of things. And there's no place for the Catholic Church in them. Hence, this is why we're seeing now this growing persecution of the Church in many forms. It's not a mistake, brothers and sisters, that they have opened wide the borders and deliberately flooded the Western countries. It's not that the West is flooding the Middle East, it's that it's the other way around. They're flooding these Western countries, and what is the fruit of this? We're seeing the fruit of it is you can't speak out now against these minorities, even if they're raping and killing your children. You can't speak out against them if they're now blocking you from your neighborhoods and they're bowing in your streets. And taking away your rights. You can't say anything. And so you got to ask, why are the Western leaders doing this? And the answer is that they've told us they want this great reset. That's what they're calling it. We're going to build back better. These are the lingo that they're using straight out of the mouth of the father of lies, because Satan always has false and empty promises. And they're ultimately, what they're doing is taking down the West. Why the West? Because Western civilization, as we know it, is really the birth of It came from Christendom, which was the blend of Christianity and the political system. And together, with one kind of unified heart, they formed the democracy that we know, the principles of democracy, the law systems that we have now where we don't cut off your right hand if you steal. Those are more barbaric practices from other countries that don't practice Christianity. And these systems of law, schools, hospitals, all of this was brought into the West by Christendom, by Christianity. And eventually, there were problems with Christianity being blended in politics. And I think that was part of the revolt of Martin Luther, part of the revolt of the French Revolution and so on. But they'd gone, of course, too far. But this is where we are now. This is where we're at now, where these Western leaders want to destroy Christianity. They don't see Christianity as having a place for a voice in the public square. And so you see Bill C-9 in Canada, which wants to have hate speech. You can't have hate speech, which offends anybody. This is what they're saying in the bill. Anyone who's offended by your speech. Well, if I say that sex before marriage is not in God's plan, or that gender ideology is contrary to the natural law, this is deemed hate speech. So we are so rapidly descending toward this that we're going to see persecution break out in Canada and in the West very soon. We've already seen it's little bits of it, especially in the free markets, where we've seen businesses fire somebody because they had an opinion about traditional marriage. But we're going to see a formalized persecution of Christianity very soon. And I'll end on this saying, if we think we're suffering here in Canada or in the United States, we're suffering persecution, it's nothing compared to what's happening right now in Nigeria and in the Sudan, where there's a wholesale cleansing of Christians, basically a genocide in those countries against Christianity. They are the martyrs, I think, of Revelation chapter 6, who are crying out, "How much longer, Lord?" And the Lord responds, "A little bit longer, until the full number of the martyrs is filled." And I just really think we're living those times right now. And more in the West, we're seeing the lesser part is Christianity. We're being outnumbered, brothers and sisters. You're seeing now in the elections where Christians are just simply being outnumbered. And with the movement of the youth, this is the real battlefield. This is where Charlie Kirk was staking out the new battlefield in the United States. He saw that the future of the world, and this is what John Paul II said, the future of the world passes through the youth. It passes through the family, but particularly the youth. And that was why John Paul II started World Youth Days. He knew he had to capture the youth because they were the future of the world. They're the new voters. They're the ones who are going to decide the elections. And now we're seeing that the young are leaning towards Marxism. They're completely naive and gullible. It's as if, and they don't teach this in university. They don't teach this, that in the wake of socialism and communist programs, hundreds of millions died. This is the history of communism. It's the history of socialism. And yet already this new generation has forgotten because they haven't been taught the errors of this system. So the dangers around us right now are severe, and this is why I wrote about the wearing down of the saints. And we can talk about the title if you want in a bit, but this is kind of where we're headed right now, and we're all tired because I think those of us who are older see the pitfall. We see the edge of the cliff that we're racing toward, like a herd of buffalo and about to go off the cliff. It's kind of horrendous, and yet Our Lady of Fatima in 1917, so that's 108 years ago, warned us that this is where we were headed, and she gave us the solution, and we really haven't listened. So here we are. And so, I mean, Jesus was perfect, and I'm a million miles away from Jesus, and yet the same thing is going to happen to us as Christians. They want to silence us. And so this is the time for us as Catholics and as Christians. We have to put on our big boy pants. And we have to make up our mind and be willing right now today to say, Jesus, I'm willing to die for you. I'm willing to go to prison for you. I'm willing to lose my job for you. And if you aren't ready to sacrifice for your life for Christ, you might lose your salvation. This is where we're at, because the pressures of political correctness, of this dictatorship of relativism, particularly here in the West, we're already seeing it in Nigeria and Sudan again, but here in the West, we're on the verge of seeing a tremendous persecution. It will begin with imprisonment, with losing charitable status, all this stuff. But ultimately, these things ultimately break out into a much more severe persecution. Islam, in its practice, does not have tolerance for Christianity, and that's why you're seeing what you're seeing in the Middle East and Africa and so on. If you look at the practice of Islam in other countries, they'll throw homosexuals from rooftops in Islam. So there's no tolerance for it. So why then are we welcoming into our Western society by the millions people from Islamic countries? And the reason goes back to exactly what I said before, which is that it serves the purpose of the Masonic sects, which is to completely overthrow the Catholic Church. This is interesting. Evangelical Christians, whom I love them for their faith and their biblical, their love of the Bible, their love of Jesus, of his name. There's a beautiful simplicity there in the faith. But they need to look at the enemy, who the real enemy is considered by these secret societies. They don't say Martin Luther, they don't say the Anglicans. It's Roman Catholicism. Why? Because that's the church that Jesus established. That's the church that Christ gave ultimately his authority to. And they recognize this. Satanists don't go to evangelical churches to take their wafers and grape juice. They come to Catholic churches to steal the host, because Satanists know that Jesus Christ he's in that host. He is present, physically present in that host. He's there. And so they take him so that they can then go and desecrate Jesus. So even the Satanists have a rudimentary understanding of what their enemy they're dealing with. And so this is why they're flooding the borders with Islam, and why they're starting to pass laws now that you can't criticize. You can't say anything negative about Islam, about its violation of human rights, of women's rights, and so on. This is called, they say, Islamophobia. Well, this is, of course, we all know this is a violation of reason. It's reasonable to have these discussions. It's reasonable and right, and we're not allowed to have them. Why? Because Islam serves the purpose of the Great Reset, which is to crush Christianity. If you listen to imams and some of the teachers of the Quran and so on, many of them will say these moderate Muslims you know what? In Catholicism, we call them Catholics who water down the faith. We call them cafeteria Catholics. For them, these are cafeteria Muslims who don't follow what Islam is saying. And there's a lot of confusion in Islam. We have the magisterium in the Catholic Church, which, up until the last 12, 15 years, we had really clear teachings. Now there's ambiguity entering in, but we've got the magisterium teaching clear teachings. And, even now, you can pick up your catechism, and all of us we know what the true faith is. We know what the understanding of our teachings are. But in Islam, it's not quite the same. They've got the hadith and the sayings of Muhammad, and then they have the Quran, and then there's different interpretations. But so you've got these different elements within them. I mean, I worked many decades ago with a Muslim, and he was a beautiful man. He wanted unity with us as Christians. He believed that we all worship the same God of Abraham. But that's that's a truth. But that's about where it ends, because they don't recognize Jesus Christ as one of the divine third persons. So, that's where we say, we go back to 1 John, where it says, he who denies Jesus as the Son of God, there is the spirit of Antichrist. So there's a spirit of Antichrist that runs within Islam because it rejects the divinity of Christ. And but it's really interesting, Ron. This we have to be willing to speak the truth now. And what I'm saying is not in hatred. I don't hate Muslims. I want them to know Jesus. And right now in the Middle Eastern countries, I don't know how many people know this, but Jesus is appearing in visions and dreams to multiple. It's thousands is what we're hearing, and letting them know who he is. And so there's something happening in the Muslim world where Jesus Christ is manifesting himself, and they're converting to Christianity. So I don't think we need to panic, but we need to speak the truth and be aware that our culture is disappearing. And ironically, it was Richard Dawkins, the radical, I would call him a militant atheist, who said this, and this is in 2016. Again, this is Richard Dawkins. He said, there are no Christians, as far as I know, blowing up buildings. I'm not aware of any Christian suicide bombers. I'm not aware of any major Christian denomination that believes the penalty for apostasy is death. I have mixed feelings about the decline of Christianity, insofar as Christianity might be a bulwark against something worse. Well, I think we're seeing what's happening now. We're seeing wokeism and radical Islamism coming into the West. And Richard Dawkins was saying, I think something worse is there if we get rid of Christianity. So, yeah, thank you, Richard, for identifying the fact that, he's very subtly saying, you know what? Christians' gospel, the heart of their gospel is to love one another, is to love your neighbor. He recognizes Christians came in and built schools, we built hospitals, we served the poor, we gave free health care, we educated people who were poor. Yeah, there were some bad teachers we saw in residential schools, but that wasn't the bulk of them. We saw bad characters that hurt the indigenous. We have to recognize this. This is part of the truth and reconciliation process here in our country. So some of these things happen, but this was not, this didn't define, never has and never will define Catholicism. We also had saints in those residential schools. We also had saints running these hospitals and schools. And so Christianity came into the West, and as we've kicked Christianity out and more the state takes it over, so now we have in Canada, what is the fruit of our healthcare system? Well, yes, you have universal healthcare system, but our country's also kind of going broke now because of that. We're also now, instead of the country doctor who goes out and he gets paid a meal and a few, dollars, whatever, for his services. Now we have to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and most of them are driving luxury cars, and our healthcare system is not affordable. And many people now are committing suicide in Canada because they can't get good healthcare, and they're in despair, and they're not being given the gospel of life. So you can see what socialism ultimately, again, it just seems to fall on the sword, its own sword. And the removal of Christianity and our Catholic school system from teaching what is the fruit of it. Now you have wokeism, and you have this has taken over the school system in our state, teaching gender ideology, Ray.
And we're seeing, I've seen videos on social media of English school children, blonde hair, blue-eyed English school children being taught how to pray, with the Islamic prayer, like doing those, I don't know how they bow or whatever. So
yeah, and this is acceptable, but praying the Our Father is not. This is the hypocrisy in this is astounding, and you have to see the devil's footprints all over this.